All right. Joined us today. This is the second webinar that I'm having with SBA. We're again really fortunate to have Julie Klaus with SBA on the webinar with us. Julie, you did a great job last time, and you've just been a pleasure to work with during this terrible situation we're in and before. So you've been a good partner. Thank you for agreeing to come back on. Thank you to everyone who's joined us. I know you have a gazillion questions to ask. I hope we can answer them all. If you have a question during this, please submit it through the question and answer function at the bottom of your screen. And when you do submit it, please include your first name and the city in which you live. Again, thank you. I'll just make a couple of brief comments, and Julie, I'm going to turn it over to you, and then Katie can moderate this. Katie, thanks for doing this again. You were a great moderator last time. It'll work out fine this time. I just want to say that I know this has been a struggle for small business people throughout our district and across the country. And remember, this was the first ever program like this. This was big. It was bigger than anything we've ever done as a government, and there's always going to be wrinkles that we have to work out. Personally, I'm not pleased with the speed at which the program is operating. I've heard constantly from small businesses throughout my district that they are having trouble both getting in the queue to get a loan, and then after they're in, they're having trouble getting any confirmation on getting that loan. This is not what Congress wanted this program to look like. We wanted to make sure that we could get money out the door quickly. And remember, the reason for this, especially the PPP, was to make sure that small businesses got the money they needed to be able to keep their employees working. This is an effort to keep small businesses intact, make sure that they're able to withstand whatever the fallout from this pandemic may be, and that their workers were able to stay employed. That's what we want to do. I know the news has been reporting and reporting that the program is almost out of money, and I suspect that's accurate. And there's efforts right now to infuse more money into the program. I've got concerns, as I say, with the program, and I want to put more money in, but before I'm willing to do that, I need to know that that money is going to small businesses throughout our district and across the country. I don't want a program that's servicing big businesses that don't need the help. This was for small businesses to get the help that they need. So please understand that any negotiation that's taking place right now is being done to ensure that the people that need the money are going to get the money. Example, we live in a district that is an ag district, and agriculture has been excluded from participating in some of the programs. That's not right. Some of the nonprofits have been excluded from being able to participate in the program. That's not right. So the negotiations that are going on right now between the administration and House Democrats and the Senate Republicans is to try and fix some of these problems to make sure that the money gets out in a fastest way possible into the hands of the people that need it the most. So as these negotiations continue on, I'm sure you'll hear more in the news, but just know that the efforts to negotiate our focus program work better. So thank you very much. And Julie, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you. And again,
thank you, Congressman. I appreciate the forum and the chance to kind of talk through what's happening and then answer some of your questions. So because there might be some people who need a little bit of more background, I do want to share my screen really quickly and just kind of talk a little bit more about the specific programs available. And there might be some things you didn't know of or weren't aware of too, so I'd like to bring those to your attention. So we'll spend a little bit of time, we'll make this fairly quick, and then we'll open the floor to your questions. So I just wanted to let people know that there's different types of programs that are available even from SBA directly. Now, this isn't even covering what's available from the state of California or that might be available locally in your community through a special community fund. But from the SBA, there's kind of two types of programs available right now. There's this, what I'm calling debt deferment or relief bucket, and then there's the loan bucket. So quick note on the debt relief and deferment bucket. So if you have an existing SBA disaster loan, maybe you were a victim of one of the wildfires in the recent past, for example. If you have an existing SBA disaster loan, we have automatically deferred your payments on those loans through the end of this calendar year. Likewise, if you have existing SBA debt under our 7A, 504, or microloan program, you also have the ability to have those loan payments deferred. In order to enact that, please talk to your lender. They have, we have SOPs that govern how they go about doing this, and they can go ahead and defer your payments for several months. The third thing, and this is a brand new program that did come out of the CARES Act, is the SBA debt relief program. So if you have an existing 7A loan, or you are thinking about taking out a 7A loan between now and September 27th, SBA will pay principal and interest on that debt for 6 months. Again, this is something that is being made available through the lenders since they are the holders of the loan. So you need to talk to your lender to see how they can tap into that. SBA is continuing to message our lending community on what they need to do in order to activate or tap into this debt relief program. But then I'll switch over to the loan bucket. So there's actually 3 types of programs available under this. Quickly want to talk about Express Bridge Loan Program, which is a loan that's available from commercial banks, specifically our Express lenders, and there's, I think, 9 or 10 of them in the greater Bay Area. They are eligible to offer up to $25,000 through a very streamlined process. The intent of this is to be able to help me get you some working capital quickly, especially while you may be waiting for other funding sources to kick in, whether it be from SBA or state of California or another resource. So that is also available. The list of express lenders is on our SBA website, if you don't know who those are. But then the next 2 are the big ones, the Paycheck Protection Program and the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. So the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program has been activated in California for, I think we're going on our 4th week now. And this program is available to small businesses and nonprofits who have been have suffered some sort of economic injury as a result of COVID-19. This loan is not meant to cover losses you may have suffered, but rather to focus on helping you support your business needs as they exist today and for the next month or 2. So the program is a loan for up to $2 million that has an interest rate of 3.75% for small businesses and an interest of 2.75% for nonprofits. It has a 30-year term, and we are deferring payments on this loan for 12 months. This is actually a loan that's available directly from SBA, so you do not need to go to a lender for this one or any other third party. You go to the SBA website, sba.gov, and you can apply directly online for this program. You will also see as part of this, as a result of the CARES Act, we have what's now called EIDL, or Economic Injury Disaster Loan Advance. So this is a new enhancement to the existing program where we can provide an advance of up to $10,000 to the applicants. The way this $10,000 or this up to $10,000 is being calculated is it is $1,000 per employee up to the $10,000. If you are a sole proprietor, you are considered an employee for this purpose. So on your application, when it says number of employees, please put in at least 1. The goal of this advance is to be able to push you out some money a little bit faster while the rest of the loan is being processed. The way that's working right now is it's one application through our website. At the end of the application, if you'd like to be considered for the EIDL advance, just check the box that says EIDL advance, and they will automatically do that calculation, and they'll push out those funds to you. They're automatically directly depositing those funds into whatever account you designate on your application form. The EIDL advance too, this up to $10,000 is also a forgivable loan. So regardless of what happens with the rest of your EIDL application, this tranche, this advance is forgiven. The Paycheck Protection Program, switching gears. So to contrast, Paycheck Protection Program is only available through our commercial lenders because it is an SBA guaranteed loan program product. So the bank is technically providing the loan. SBA is there to provide a guarantee. We are actually providing 100% guarantee in this case. I don't think we've ever done that before. If this particular loan is more narrow in scope than the EIDL program, it is focused, as the congressman said, on helping you retain your current employees or bring them back if you've had to lay them off or let them go for any reason. It is for 8 weeks of payroll costs and some select non-payroll costs. The non-payroll costs are limited to interest on mortgage, rent, and utilities. The payroll cost, though, is a bigger bucket than you might think. It includes not only wages and salaries and the traditional compensation, it can also include benefit packages and costs associated with that you might have. So if you offer health insurance, for example, to your employees, the premium costs, if you have other insurance costs, if you have retirement accounts or retirement benefits, all of those costs can also be bundled into your overall calculation for payroll costs. What way this program is working is you calculate basically 1 month's worth of these payroll costs, and it's multiplied then by 2.5, so 2 times, so you get to 8 weeks of payroll plus a little bit more to cover some of those non-payroll expenses we talked about. This program, if you use the funds in accordance with the intent, we are offering forgiveness on this loan as well. In order to trigger the forgiveness portion, the overall loan proceeds must be used, at least 75% of those proceeds must be used to support those payroll costs, and no more than 25% may be used to support those other non-payroll costs. So again, in order for the loan to be forgiven, you need to maintain that 75-25 split in how you use the proceeds of that loan. For any proceeds that are not forgiven for any number of reasons, there's an interest rate of 1% on this loan. There's a term of 2 years, and we are again deferring payments on this loan for 6 months. So that's the very, very quick overview of those 2 programs. I do want to also point out, in case you weren't aware, we do have a lot of resource partners and other things that you might want to tap into, whether you need assistance putting together this information for either of the 2 loan programs, or you need other business assistance. Especially our SBDCs, SCORE, our Women Business Centers, and we have a Veteran Business Outreach Center. All the advisors are available and ready to help you, albeit we're doing everything by phone and email these days, but they are still there for you, and all those services are free of charge. And our NorCal, Northern California SBDC network has also created like a one central intake with their financing team. So they have an 800, well, it's 833, Ask SBDC phone line you can call, staffed by the financing team to help you triage or answer your questions really quickly, or get you tapped into an advisor if you want a more longer term relationship with someone to help you. So I just want to make people aware that that currently exists as well. And also on this resource slide, just give you some of the links to the different things we talked about today, also how to contact me and my team. And we're San Francisco based, but we cover from Santa Cruz all the way up to the Oregon border. So we are your local SBA office. And the best way to reach us right now is through our email, sfomail@sba.gov. And I'm happy, for these slides to be shared out by the Congressman's office if they so desire with attendees. So with that, I will turn it over to some questions.
Julie, thank you very much. Now I'll turn it over to Katie to moderate the questions. And Katie, go ahead.
Awesome. So before I jump into the questions, I just want to remind everyone that to use the Q&A feature, that's where we're going to be pulling the questions from for this Q&A portion of the webinar. I'd also like to remind everyone that there's a feature where if you hover over the questions, you can like them. So please like the questions that you see that you would like to have an answer to. Okay, cool. So first question. So I'm just going to read what it says. It says, ours is a very small business in the queue with a bank. Our application was approved by the bank's lenders, but we are still waiting for an SBA number. Our application was in early. We did everything right. Why is it? So they still haven't heard anything back. Why is it that SBA is still approving new lenders like Square and PayPal when when these other banks aren't even getting people through the process yet?
Well, there's multiple parts to that. So let me first say that we're onboarding new lenders as a way to create more avenues for businesses because there was a lot of people complaining that they didn't have access to resources. They couldn't find resources to help make the PPP loans. So this was an effort to try to provide more avenues for people to tap into. If the bank that you're working with is having some sort of technical issues, we do have like a hotline and triage, and then we've asked banks they can contact me in the district. We've been trying to triage some of the issues. SBA is issuing a loan number in this case, but all of these lenders have what we call delegated authority for purposes of the PPP lending. So SBA doesn't actually have to go in and review anything. The bank is doing the full review. They are getting issued a loan number from SBA, obviously for tracking and other purposes, and for our recording purposes. But so if they're having any sort of technical issues getting that loan number, I'm hoping the banks are reaching out to us because we're working almost 24/7 to try to triage those issues so those can keep moving through the pipeline.
Julie, I've heard a lot from constituents about that. It seems that the small lenders, the small businesses are getting overlooked, and some banks are focusing more on the bigger customers that they have. Is there some sort of incentive for banks to lend to their bigger customers rather than their smaller customers?
I guess you'd have to ask the individual lenders that. I'm not, from an SBA perspective, I can't think of a reason, but obviously I can't speak. I'm not a spokesperson for any of the banks, so I can't speak to their internal policies or anything. We have been trying to bring on board a lot more community-based lenders and credit unions even. So there are some additional resources coming in the pipeline and getting them up to speed. A lot of them have never done any SBA lending specifically. So again, we're trying to get them up very quickly. We have a new, it's all behind the scenes kind of stuff. We have a new portal for them to use that is a little bit more user-friendly. And they seem to be successfully being able to use that now. I worked with 2 banks yesterday to get them through that portal. So hopefully everything is moving faster now.
A number of my colleagues and I have sent a letter to Secretary Mnuchin asking him to do that, to specifically bring on new lenders and specifically raise the cap so credit unions could more fully participate. So if there's anything else that I can do to help expedite that, please let me know.
Sure, absolutely. And then the Fed actually put out a press release, I think it was Thursday or Friday of last week, where they're also making more resources available, especially to some of these smaller and community banks, so that they will in turn hopefully have more resources to lend against as well. So hopefully that will also enable some of these smaller banks who have a very finite amount of resources to be able to offer some more loans as well. So have to wait and see if that has an impact on this.
Okay, Katie?
Awesome. Okay, so the next question is one that we've already gotten probably 50 times, so it must be one that is very pressing. There have been several news reports that the money that has been allocated for this program is running out quickly. So are there plans to have more money? Should people still be applying? Can you both speak to that, please?
I can tell you the status of what it is today, and I'll let the congressman talk about the future. But right now, as you guys all well know, the maximum amount we were allocated was the 349 billion. As of this morning, we're at about 280 billion in lending in the PPP program. So there is still money there in that pot. So I do encourage you, if you haven't applied yet and are thinking about it, please submit your application so it can get in the pipeline. As to what's going to happen in the future, I will let the congressman provide his insight.
Well, I spoke to this in the beginning. I'll just briefly say, yes, you should continue to apply. The media reports are that the money is quickly running out, and we're negotiating right now in Congress as to how to get more money into the program. As I said earlier, this is not some sort of political nonsense. This is honest to goodness negotiations to ensure, from my perspective, to ensure that the money, the additional money, goes where we need it to go. And that's to the small businesses like the folks who are on this webinar today. I want to make sure that small businesses have access to this money. I want to make sure that small ag businesses have access to these monies. I want to make sure that our nonprofits have access to this money. The idea that we would just add more money and it not go to the folks who need it and the need to keep their employees employed, I think would be a mistake. So the negotiations are ongoing. I should know more specifics tomorrow. When I do, I'll probably post something on my Facebook. But most definitely, if you need these monies, apply. And I don't think Congress is going to shut off the spigot anytime soon.
And I did, in case there was any question, I did want to clarify that farmers are eligible to apply for the PPP program. So in case there was any debate, yes.
It's the EIDL program.
The EIDL program is a little bit more limited. Although I do want to caution, especially if you have any sort of manufacturing or retail component, Farmer Plus, you should be eligible for EIDL, so you can also apply. It's just pure farming, unfortunately, is a little bit more limited. But if you're just a traditional farmer, we do have some other resources. We're happy to try to tap you into, including those through USDA, some of our other agencies.
All right. Next question. Can you get both the PPP and EIDL loan? The PPP application says EIDL will be paid out of PPP.
So yes, if you may apply for both programs so long as you're not applying for the same purpose. So since PPP is more narrowly focused on payroll, you can't submit for payroll expenses through PPP and then again through EIDL. So you might, if you have a situation where you have, expenses in both categories, which most people do, you probably want to apply just for the payroll expenses in PPP and then put all your other types of expenses, whether it be rent, all your accounts payable and all that into the EIDL program. What we saw is because the PPP program was a new program that came out of the CARES Act, it didn't exist when the EIDL program was first made available. So if you read the rule, it goes actually through a very detailed calculation on because we don't want you to use the money for the same purpose. So anyone who got an EIDL loan before or on April 3rd is asking to refinance that EIDL loan into the PPP, again, to avoid this duplication of benefits, if you will. So there isn't a calculation if you are in that bucket. You can follow in our rule to see what the net effect is on that. But moving forward, you don't necessarily need to refinance because again, you shouldn't be using the loans, both loans for the same purpose.
Cool. All right, so the next question, people are wondering if landlords are eligible to receive SBA loans.
I am recommending they apply. and leverage how they're reporting on their tax returns as far as, income or net earnings from self-employment as landlords. Yes.
Cool. Next question from Jean in St. Helena. So she says, we are independent contractors with a small business that if we can get through the next few months, we would only need the $10,000 grant rather than the entire loan. Can either the PPP or the EIDL just provide the grant without a further loan commitment?
So the EIDL advance is the only forgivable portion, not the whole loan. So the net EIDL advance is calculated at $1,000 per employee. So if you, and I don't know if it sounds like there's at least 2 people maybe that are employed by that company. So those 2 could qualify for that. And you can just take the EIDL advance and walk away. You don't have to apply for the full tranche of money. Or if you do apply for the full tranche of money and decide later you don't want it or don't need it, you can always cancel or deny refuse the loan. No harm, no foul, no adverse impact there. The PPP program, because it is a forgivable loan if you use it for the intended purpose, and that's to rehire or to maintain or rehire your employees. And if you follow that in accordance, that will be a forgivable loan. It's not really a grant per se, but it is a forgivable loan. So I don't know if that probably doesn't quite clarify, but you can always email me offline too if you want to go into more depth about your specific situation.
So the answer is yes, but they only qualify for $1,000 per employee.
Under the EIDL advance, yes.
Okay.
Okay, next question. Why can't the government just grant the money directly to small businesses rather than working through the SBA and private banks? It seems as though banks are a big hurdle here.
So, well, right now, we're implementing the programs as they were established. So I can't speak to why the decision to set up the programs this way was done in the first place. But I don't know, Congressman, if you want to add any insight on the.
Well, I'll just say that it's an existing process. So irrespective of how it's done, there would have to be a process. And I believe it was thought that the most expeditious way to do it was to use the existing process rather than to reinvent the wheel.
Right. And, oh, go ahead. Go to the next one.
Okay, so this one says, our office has 2 assistants that were laid off and are currently on unemployment since March 20th. We have heard that the deadline for bringing them back in order to keep in line with the SBA loan relief is sometime in June. Is there any talk of extending that deadline? If the shelter-in-place orders or social distancing guidelines suggest that we need to do that longer.
So as it exists today, that deadline is part of the legislation. So I can speak to today. That is the June 30th is the deadline, but stay tuned. That may change, especially with new legislation that's coming down the line.
I concur. I think that, and I've said this before, I said it on the last webinar, we're kind of building the plane as we're learning to fly it. So I think you're going to see changes. Right now, we're on the 3rd piece of legislation, working on the 4th. I figure there's going to be a 5th and a 6th, maybe more. So things could change.
Okay, cool. Next question. Is there any relief available for those who own vacation rentals? So this person asking a question says they have several vacation rentals that have been shut down due to coronavirus. And is there any relief for those lost bookings?
Mm-hmm. So I've had a lot of Airbnb participants, hosts, contact me. And so I've actually elevated this specific question, not just Airbnb, but the whole concept of if you're a host through any one of these platforms and you do vacation rentals or short-term rentals, because I want to make sure I have the right information before I go out and tell people absolutely yes, or a yes but, or a yes and. So I have asked that question, and I am waiting for some policy clarification so that I can give you the specific answer. But that said, I would say go ahead and apply, because the bank is also the determining factor on these loans. And there are situations too where even though they have rental properties, they have actually set up a business to help manage that. So that's a more clear-cut situation. Yes, you can apply. For those that are just getting supplemental rental income, it's a little fuzzier. So that's what I really am trying to get absolute clarity on before I say a firm yes. But go ahead and apply. I would not restrict anybody from applying, because again, information is coming out every single day as we get clarification, as we get updates on this program and its implementation. So I wouldn't necessarily wait. I would say go ahead and apply and get your loan into the pipeline. And if a decision comes later to the contrary, you haven't lost out on anything.
All right. Next question. It seems like some banks are being more accommodating than others, which is frustrating. Considering that the infrastructure seems to dissuade you from dealing with a bank that isn't your usual bank. Are there any efforts or legislation in place to make sure that all banks adhere to the same standards?
There's no current legislation that I'm aware of, and I can't speak to anything that's coming out in the future potentially. I don't want to put you on the spot, Congressman, but I don't know if you want to weigh in.
We've had this conversation before. Julie, you and I have had this conversation offline. There's been some banking practices that me personally, if it was happening to me, I would consider changing my bank. And I think you're going to see a lot of that. So whether or not you can legislate that type of behavior, I don't know. But I suspect as we work through this, you're going to see a lot of legislation designed to try and figure out how to make this process work better for the people. Help. What that looks like, I don't know that any of us know yet, and it's not going to happen overnight. Legislative change takes a long time under perfect conditions, and the conditions under which we're working right now are far from perfect.
And because of what's happening, that's one of the reasons why we are trying to onboard new lenders. We're being a lot more flexible in what those requirements are. Of course, we are keeping it more narrowly focused on the PPP program right now, but that's all in an effort that there will be more resources out there in your communities for you to tap into if you need to. Like I said, credit unions, that's been a bigger push with them. And some smaller, more rural banks and things that may have never participated with SBA in the past, but now really want to support their community, so they're looking to offer the program.
Okay, next question. When asking for the $10,000 advance, or I think they're referring to the $1,000 per employee that you had referenced. So when asking for that advance, the application says funds would be spent on social services to the general public. What does this mean?
I think they're referring to it. There's a question in there, I think, that relates more to any faith-based organizations. So that sounds like what they're referring to. Some of those questions, if they're not applicable to you, you won't necessarily have to answer. There'll be a little, if you're in the EIDL application, you'll see a little red bar next to each of the entry points. The red bar indicates that that's a required question. If you don't see the red bar, it's probably an optional question because it might apply only to nonprofits or to certain types of businesses. So I don't know if that helps clarify, but the EIDL application should tell you, should identify which of those boxes are required for you. And if it's not required, it might not be applicable and you could skip it.
Great. Okay, cool. Next question. This legislation, as they understand it, was written to include independent contractor payments as part of the PPP, but it has been interpreted to exclude them. Will this interpretation issue be fixed, and what can independent contractors do in this situation?
Well, the way the rules is written is that for business, you cannot count independent contractors you might hire as your employees for purpose, this is for the PPP program, for your employees, because all of those independent contractors are eligible to apply for PPP in their own right. So we don't want it to be like a double dip situation. So those independent contractors are still eligible, they just need to apply for themselves. The EIDL program, on the other hand, as an ordinary operating expense, if you hire people to do certain services or skills or things for business, and you have a monthly fee or cost associated with that, that can be part of your. You can use those working capital proceeds to cover those expenses. So it's treated a little differently in each program. Which is, again, why I always tell businesses, it's really behooves you to sit down, take a minute, and see what kind of expenses do you have today and for the next couple of months, and then where the bulk of those expenses lie. If they're in everything but payroll, the EIDL program is a program that might be more beneficial to you. But if you're payroll heavy, the PPP program might be more beneficial. Or if you've got a lot in both buckets, applying for both could be beneficial. So everybody's in a slightly different situation. So it behooves you to just take a minute to sit down to figure out what your actual financial needs are, and then try to differentiate between the programs.
And let me just add that if you have a situation that isn't applicable to these answers or to the program, I want to hear from you. Contact me through one of my district offices, drop me an email, let me know, because there may be situations that we just don't know about and need to be remedied in future legislation. So let me know. And then also, a lot of the information you're getting today, when you go to put that into practice, if you have problems or you have additional questions, contact my office as well, and we'll try and get those answers for you.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, we're all learning together right now. Sorry. Go ahead, Katie. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. Okay, so the next question is: the PPP first come, first served, or are the applications being prioritized? If the latter, how and according to what criteria?
I'm not aware of any sort of prioritization. I've had people ask me if it's geography or industry or something, and I'm not aware of any sort of prioritization. It's available to all participating lenders, and they submit their applications all through the same system. So it is first come, first serve in that regard.
I agree. I have heard, however, that some lenders have manipulated the process to benefit either themselves or more favorable customers. That's a concern that we all have, and something that we're trying to figure out if there's a way to address that, if it is in fact a real concern.
All right. Next question. People are wondering what the timeline looks like once they submit their application. Approximately how long should they expect to wait until they get the loan money?
So for the PPP program, because it's running through the banks, that is a question I would ask your lender when you submit your application. The way the process works, just a little behind the scenes knowledge, is you would submit your application, the lender, they'll have whatever internal process to evaluate it and make their decision, go through their underwriting process. The bank actually makes the decision on whether to fund the loan or not. And once they say yes, all they do is enter their information into SBA's system. They get a loan number that's generated, and then they're free to close the loan. So once they close the loan, the rule does state that we are hoping, we want banks to disperse the loan within 10 days after they close. I have had a couple borrowers in the PPP program that I've just asked to kind of keep me advised of how the process is going for them. And pretty much all of them have reported that once they submitted, it took about a week to close the loan because they had to submit a couple additional documents or clarify a few things. And so when they closed the loan, and then the funds have, one of them, the funds were dispersed within like 2 days. But again, this is bank specific. They have, per the rule, up to 10 days to disperse. So the timeline, depending on how much internal processing time the bank needs, could vary from bank to bank. The EIDL program, on the other hand, is being funneled through SBA. I can't give you any specific timelines on that, but I would say for the regular EIDL loan, at least 4 weeks, and that's because of the sheer amount of volume. That's the amount of applications that have been submitted in a very short period of time into one organization. So not meant to be an excuse. I just want to be realistic in the sense that that is taking longer because of the sheer volume of applications that we have. But they are moving. I do get emails every single day from borrowers that are saying, yes, I got my disbursement. The EIDL advance is coming out faster as was intended. And we are seeing that they are making that directly deposited into your account. So on the EIDL application form, you will submit, a bank account number and a routing number, and that's for the purpose of having those funds directly deposited to you. So I do encourage, if you haven't been checking your account on any sort of regular basis, to please do so, because the EIDL advance funds will be directly deposited. You will, though, get closing documents for the rest of the EIDL loan. So that will come through to you via email. So please keep checking the email that you submitted on your application as well. You will get access to the closing documents through an email linked to a special portal, so we can do all of this electronically to close the loan.
Great. So sort of a follow-up question to something that you mentioned, Julie, as a part of the PPP process, that once they've been approved by their bank, that the bank then goes to SBA. Is that correct?
They do. They have a system that they enter the loan information in, and they will get a loan number back from SBA. This is for this particular purpose because we do have the $349 billion as our allotted amount for this program. That is to track the money and to also get, give us accounting practices, and then also the information on the borrower. But there's nothing, once they enter the information into the system, that loan number is auto-generated. So there's no lag time in waiting for SBA to make any decisions or approvals in this process.
Okay.
It's really more data entry.
Okay, that's good to know, because we've had quite a few questions where people, it sounds like they're in that in-between part where they have their approval from the bank, but they're waiting for the SBA number. So it sounds like banks might be having a hard time maneuvering that process, or maybe that's the understanding of the people who are requesting the loan. So what's your advice to those people who are in that in-between phase?
Yeah, I mean, most lenders know if they're having technical issues to reach out to SBA, and I think they're doing that. I mean, that's, I've only had, of the 50 or so banks that I've, like we call headquartered in our geographic area, I've only had a handful of them have these technical issues. I think we're working through almost all of them, but it could be a technical issue, and the banks know to contact us, and we're kind of triaging those and trying to get those worked through as quickly as possible. So it does help. I've had some borrowers reach out, but it is more beneficial if the lender reaches out, because they're the ones that are in the system, and so we need them to be online with us to triage the problem.
Great. Okay, great. Next question. People are wondering if there is a way for them to track the status of their application, because a lot of people are applying and then not hearing anything back for weeks at a time.
Mm-hmm. For the EIDL loan, unfortunately, when we flipped over to the new streamlined application, which also incorporated the EIDL advance on March 30th, Unfortunately, this new platform does not have like a dashboard or way for you to go in and just check automatically. There is unfortunately not a really great way to check that right now. I am telling applicants, if you have a loan number that starts with the number 3, you are being actively processed. It is going through. I can call, our disaster office to check on status, but one, that slows things down for them because it takes time away from them continuing to process. But at best, they can tell me it's in process. Like, I don't necessarily know, like, oh, I've reviewed this and I'm going on to review this piece of it and I'll be done with it by the end of the day. Unfortunately, I don't have that level of detail available. I know, this, the last thing you want to hear is to please, wait for SBA to contact you, but it is happening. I know not happening fast enough when you're not one of those people who's already started to get your initial funding or your closing documents, but I do know every day, a continual basis, the loans are being approved and money is being dispersed. If your application for EIDL starts with a 2 and you have not gone back into the new streamlined application to apply for the EIDL Advance, I do strongly recommend you do so. Because that will help make sure you're in that system too for the EIDL Advance. That's the only way we can get you into the EIDL Advance program right now to be considered for that program.
Julie, is there an effort to figure out how to do a more adequate tracking so people aren't left in the lurch?
I have heard that they did want to create some sort of dashboard so people could check, but I have not seen it being made available yet. So I'd have to check to see if that's still in the works. I mean, I think they're trying to throw all the resources at the processing side, so that may or may not happen.
Okay.
Okay, next question. Okay, this person says that they are an Uber driver part-time to supplement their income. They haven't been able to drive since March 21st. It is unclear to them if there's any relief available to them for losing that extra income through Uber. Do you have any suggestions for them?
I presume, I don't know if they're looking at one program or the other, but if I would say as long as they're reporting that income on their tax returns as a way to verify that, as net earnings from self-employment or some other mechanism, I would say go ahead and apply.
Okay.
If they're not reporting those earnings on their tax returns, that makes it a much more challenging situation.
Okay. This person is wondering, can a company submit a PPP loan application to more than one lender at a time? It sounds like the approvals are taking a long time and they want to make sure that they maximize their opportunity to take advantage of this program.
There's nothing in our rules that say you can't apply to more than one lending institution. I would be, mindful of the lending institution's process and things too. And if you do decide that that's what you want to do, please communicate with the other banks that you may have applied to. If you get an approval from one bank, try to communicate with the others right away so that they can pull that application and not spend time on that and free up potential funds for another applicant. So if you do that, I just encourage you to be really respectful of the other lending institutions and let them know right away if you want to cancel one of your requests.
Okay, we have time for just a few more questions and then we will wrap things up. But I'm getting a lot of requests to continue talking about what is available for independent contractors and sole proprietors. So if you could just talk about that, that would be really helpful to a lot of people.
So they can apply under either program. How they'll be evaluated will be slightly different under each program. They did, for the PPP program, just expanded or espoused upon the rule, and there is some calculations for sole proprietors. It's in the new rule, interim rule, like addition to the interim rule that just came out yesterday. So I can direct you to the SBA.gov website to read in greater detail, because I'm not going to be able to recite it verbatim off the top of my head right now. But there is some much more clear guidance for sole proprietors, what you use according to your Schedule C on how you make your calculations for payroll and payroll costs. So there is some more detailed guidance on that, and encourage you to go look at that as well. And if you still aren't sure how to make the calculations, you can reach out to us in the district office, and we'll try to tell you what we know as we know it. You can also have the conversation with your lender if you already have a business lender that you can reach out to see how they're treating it internally inside the bank. But both groups are eligible to apply. Anybody's eligible to apply. The caveat with the PPP program, as stated before, is that as a business, and if you have other employees, you can put those payroll costs into your total. If you leverage independent contractors through 1099s, you cannot count those 1099 contractors as your specific employees for this purpose. That is because those independent contractors, those 1099 contractors, can go apply for PPP directly themselves and receive financial support that way. So again, as the business, you can't count them, but as the individual independent contractor, you are eligible to apply in your own right. So I don't know if that helps clarify.
Okay, this next question is probably going to be our final question for this. So this one says, how does the SBA PPP loan help LLCs? For example, this person owns a winery operating as a California LLC with 4 members, and each of those members are the only employees. Their understanding is that members do not qualify as employees, and as a result, there is no payroll cost for the LLC. So what can someone in their situation do?
So there actually go to the rule that I just meant that came out yesterday. There's some additional guidance on that specific situation as well. So the LLC itself should apply because that's the business, and there are ways to get the support and how you calculate what each member, how you calculate the reimbursement or the compensation, or however you want to call it, for each of those members, and roll that up into your payroll costs calculation.
And so, where do they access that, Julie?
They can go right to our SBA website, sba.gov. First thing you see is COVID-19 support. Click on that, and then click through to get to the PPP program page specifically, and all the rules and everything are there. It's an interim rule. It just came out yesterday, and it talks about self-employed, trying to remember the title, self-employed, and I forgot the other part of it, but it's right there on the page. That's the best way to access it right now.
Right. Well, thank you, Katie. Thanks for moderating. You did a great job. Thanks to all of the people who came on to participate in this webinar. And Julie, again, thank you. You're phenomenal. You've done a great job. And at the risk of getting clubbed, I'll ask you, are you willing to do another one next week?
Sure. Things are in constant movement, so it might be some maybe we'll have some new programmatic information next week too. So.
Well, I've heard back from so many people that they think that you're doing a great job, and the information that you are able to share is really helping them. And that's what this is all about, trying to provide some settle in the community and provide help to people so they can keep their businesses going and keep their employees going as well. So thank you. We'll work with you to figure out a date for next week. And then thanks again to everybody who participated. If you didn't get your question answered, we'll try and provide answers for you as we did the last time. And again, if you have further questions or concerns or issues, please contact my office. again, we'll get through this. We're all in it together. We'll get through it. And I appreciate your participation, and I appreciate everything you're doing to make sure that our community stays safe. So thanks very much, Julie. Thank you again.
Thank you, Congressman, to you and your team for helping all of our small businesses right now. Thank you.
Just before we end, I'd like to add that if you do have questions or we didn't get to your question, you can email sbahelp.thompson@mail.house.gov. It's the email address that sent you the information about this webinar today. You can just reply to that email with any questions that you have, and we'll get you an answer as quickly as possible.